Hi, it's Carl Thompson here from StorageCraft in Asia Pacific. So in this tutorial, this is really wanting to highlight the high-level deployment process for an MSP to deploy ShadowXafe in their environment and start protecting their customers. So the initial sort of high-level sort of look at this, you've got the OneSystem, which is your centralized management, and then you've got your different customers, and your customers will run what's called a ShadowXafe service node. So this is a small Linux-based appliance, and that is going to perform the scheduling and management and replication tasks of the backups at each of your customer sites. Now, the service node itself is completely controlled from the OneSystem, so the OneSystem will be assigning it the work it needs to do, and that's where all the configuration is done from. So we need at least one service node at each site. If a customer has multiple VMware hosts, in that scenario, there may be benefits to installing additional service nodes to assist in the hot add transport mode for VMware. But very basically, this is what you're going to look at is each different customer, completely multi-tenant based management from OneSystem. Today, OneSystem will need to be deployed at your office or in your data center, and then this will manage all of your different customers. Coming later this year, towards the end of June, we will offer a StorageCraft hosted public OneSystem. And of course, we'll have a migration process to help partners move into that version if they would prefer. And then, of course, replication, that can obviously go to StorageCraft Cloud Services from either of these sites, or it could go back into your office or data center or to another site. So it's completely configurable. You have a lot of options around how that comes together. So step one, deploying the OneSystem. So again, this is the web-based central management console. And as an MSP, you just need to install one of these in a central location, and this will manage all of your customers from that one place. So again, OneSystem is an appliance VM. It will be deployed into VMware or Hyper-V. And again, as I mentioned in June this year, there'll be an option to, instead of having to deploy a OneSystem, you'll actually just be able to leverage a hosted one if you would prefer. So in terms of deploying it for VMware, you'll download the deployment tool, and this deployment tool will enable you, it's effectively an ISO file, but you'll mount that as an image, run the deployment tool, and that will deploy OneSystem into your VMware environment for you. And for Hyper-V, you'll have a StorageCraft agent MSI file. So you download that, you'll need to run that on the Hyper-V host, and this will install will effectively create a VM in Hyper-V for you. So create a VM, as part of that process, it will have to download a VHDX file from the StorageCraft website, so it does take a little bit of time to download. It'll automatically create the VM and turn that on for you. With Hyper-V, currently it does look for DHCP, so there will be some additional steps you have to do if there's no DHCP available. But this will also install the virtual boot plugin, so that's the Hyper-V restore target will be available on that particular machine as well. Once OneSystem's up and running, obviously you'll go to the web page, you'll have to activate it and give it some credentials and so forth to set that up. It will automatically create the first site based on your company name, and that OneSystem will effectively become part of that site. So one of the first things you might want to do if you're going to be doing any backups at that particular site or replicate customers into the site, you may like to add some storage in. So under configuration storage, you can go ahead here and add in NAS, SMB, NFS, iSCSI target storage for either local backups at that site or replication. You can also in here add in any StorageCraft Cloud Services accounts. So if your customers want to replicate their backups to StorageCraft Cloud, this is where you would add that in. And then the next step in here is to go into configuration and then sites. And this is where you can add in a site. So it's effectively a name for each one of your physical locations or customers. So you'll add in this, and this will give you a number of, you can sort of see here, tokens. So you've got the director certificate fingerprint, the service node registration token. So you need to make sure you regenerate this whenever you're going to deploy a service node. And then the agent registration token, you'll need to generate one of them as well. And then of course, each site you create has a site ID. So all of these components that I've just listed here will be needed in the next step. So it's handy to have that ready as part of configuring OneSystem. The other thing you'll need to do in OneSystem is make sure that your firewall has got the necessary ports open. So the first sort of port you'll note is that OneSystem web interface and management's all driven via HTTPS. So if you want to manage OneSystem or access it from outside of this location, you may have that open, you may restrict it, however you wish to manage that. But in terms of how the architecture works, all of the service nodes which you'll be deploying at each customer will effectively do a tunnel outbound and need to come into the OneSystem on TCP 40054. That is the key port that you'll need to come in. Now, for any sites, or if it's coming to your office or data center to where OneSystem is that you want to do replication to, those sites will need to have these following two ports enabled. 40049, this is the certificate authority that needs to be open for replication to work, as well as TCP 40051. So those two ports there I've listed are required to replicate if you want to replicate into a particular site. So that's what you'll need to do on the firewall. And additionally, for any sites that you want to replicate to, again, particularly over the internet, what you'll need to do is go into the Configuration Service Nodes tab, and what you'll see here is each site, the first service node automatically becomes what's called the service leader. This is the primary service node for that site. The OneSystem is a service leader by default. So if you mouse over that, this little option will pop up, allowing you to configure an external address. And this is just where you want to put in the public IP address for that site. That's where your firewall rule will be port forwarding into the site service leader. And basically that's going to tell any site, hey, if you want to replicate here, you're going to be doing that to this particular public IP address. So that's a good thing to do as part of your initial deployment, so you don't scratch your head later on wondering why the replication's not working. So the next step is obviously at the customer site deploying the service node. So again, for VMware, you use the deployment tool. For Hyper-V, you'll use the MSI agent, and this time you'll select service node to deploy. And with Hyper-V, this will also again install the virtual boot restore target option as part of this. And again, with Hyper-V, it will have to download the VHDX from our website, and it'll automatically create the VM and deploy that in there for you. So that's very straightforward, very much similar process to installing the OneSystem VM, although in this instance, it doesn't have a web page that you'll really browse to. It's all managed from OneSystem. So during this process, it will be asking you for things like the director certificate fingerprint, the site ID, the service node registration token. So all of those available from that sites page in OneSystem. The next step is obviously to deploy the backup agent. So with VMware, you do have the option to do agentless or host-based backups, but if you've got any VMs with databases in them, anything with VSS-aware applications that you want to have a high level of consistency, or if it's a really large VM, sometimes the agent's going to do that better. With Hyper-V, currently it only supports agent-based backup. We will be releasing host-based backup in June this year. And currently the agent is just Windows machines, physical or virtual. So any Linux machines that need an agent, that will be looking to target that for the second half of this year. So you just run the MSI. This time you'll select the StorageCraft agent for the backup service. And again, if you've got any other Hyper-V hosts that aren't running the service node component, you can just install the Hyper-V restore target on those hosts. So that's done, again, from this MSI as well. So that's pretty straightforward. This wizard will also ask you for the OneSystem IP address. It'll ask you for the director certificate fingerprint, and it'll ask you for a site ID. So all of those things, again, available in OneSystem from the sites page. If you do have any VMware environments in OneSystem, once the service node's been deployed, you can just click on Add vCenter or Host. It'll ask you which site, and obviously it'll be using that site's service node to validate the connection. And this will enable you to do host-based backup, as well as any virtual boot or full restore functions to the hosts. As well, if you're wanting to do virtual boot in VMware, you have to be running in a clustered environment using vSphere. So that is a requirement for the VMware VIA filter process, but again, you'll use the deployment tool to install this into your vSphere cluster. Finally, for a customer site, back in OneSystem, go into storage and you'll need to add in any local storage for that site. So again, it will use the service node at that site to validate and confirm that storage is accessible. You'll add that in, and then that will really then enable you to go and configure a policy. So policy is going to determine the backup frequency. You'll be able to select that local storage for this customer, specify your attention, and then you can add in replication. So the replication could be to StorageCraft Cloud, it could be to another site of the customers, or it could be back to your office or data center as the MSP. So that's very flexible. You can either replicate hourly or daily. That's up to you when you add this in. And then finally, you're just assigning the policy. So in the protection page, you'll see all of your machines listed. You can select multiple machines, assign policy, and you're basically done. So really, those 7 steps are the key. Just to recap, deploy OneSystem, configure OneSystem with the storage sites, set up the firewall and the replication for the public IPs. Step 3, deploying the service nodes at the customer sites. Step 4, deploy the backup agents and or connect any VMware environments and install the VIO filter. Step 5, add customer storage for on-site backup, so configuring their local NAS share, make sure that's been added in. And then that will enable you for step 6 to configure a policy to target that backup share and add in any replication if you wish to. And then finally, step 7, assign a policy to machines for protection. So look, I haven't dug into all of the ins and outs of each of these steps, but I wanted to, at a very high level, just give you a picture and a diagram of how all of this comes together in those key components. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. Cheers.